Imagine walking into your local grocery store a few weeks from now. You grab a shopping cart. Head toward your usual aisle. Reach for a food you've bought hundreds of times before. Then you stop. The price tag doesn't look right. You look again. Then a third time. How did this become so expensive? Unfortunately, this isn't just a hypothetical situation. Over the past few years, families around the world have watched everyday grocery prices rise faster than many people ever expected. Eggs, coffee, cooking oil, beef, rice, butter. One by one, foods that once seemed affordable suddenly became much harder to fit into the family budget. And while prices may rise and fall over time, one thing has remained constant. The global food supply faces pressure from every direction. Extreme weather, rising fuel costs, higher fertilizer prices, transportation delays, labor shortages, crop diseases, animal illnesses, growing worldwide demand. Even small disruptions can ripple through the food supply chain, eventually reaching grocery store shelves. That's why experienced shoppers don't wait until prices explode. They pay attention early. They buy wisely. And they slowly build their pantry before everyone else starts rushing to the store. Today's countdown looks at 15 foods that could become significantly more expensive if current market pressures continue. No one can predict the future with absolute certainty. But history has shown that when supply tightens while demand remains strong, prices can rise far faster than most people expect. The goal isn't to create fear. It's to help you make informed decisions before your next grocery trip. Some of the foods on today's list are already showing signs of price pressure. Others may surprise you completely. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll discover a food found in millions of kitchens that has the potential to affect your grocery budget more than almost anything else on this countdown. Before we begin, if you enjoy preparedness, smart grocery shopping, food storage tips, and practical ways to stay ahead of rising prices, subscribe to Preparedness and turn on notifications. Every week, we share useful strategies to help you build a stronger pantry, protect your budget, and prepare for whatever comes next. Now, let's begin with food number 15. Number 15. Coffee. Starting our countdown at number 15 is something millions of people can't imagine starting their morning without. Coffee. For many households, coffee isn't a luxury. It's part of the daily routine. The first cup after waking up. A refill during work. Another cup in the afternoon. It's one of the most consumed beverages on the planet. But behind every bag of coffee beans is a global supply chain that's becoming increasingly vulnerable. Unlike many foods that can be grown almost anywhere, coffee requires very specific conditions. It thrives in regions with the right temperatures, rainfall, and elevation. A single season of extreme weather can significantly reduce production. Too much rain can damage crops. Extended drought can stress coffee plants and reduce yields. Unexpected frost can destroy entire harvests in just one night. Because coffee plants take years to mature, replacing lost production isn't something farmers can do overnight. If one harvest falls short, supplies can remain tight for months or even years. Transportation is another major factor. Coffee often travels thousands of miles before reaching your kitchen. After harvesting, the beans must be cleaned, dried, processed, sorted, roasted, packaged, shipped across oceans, moved through distribution centers, and finally delivered to grocery stores. Every step depends on fuel, labor, shipping containers, and reliable transportation networks. When shipping costs increase, coffee prices usually follow. Demand continues growing as well. Millions of new coffee drinkers enter the market every year. Coffee shops continue expanding. Restaurants, hotels, offices, and grocery stores all compete for the same global supply. When production slows while demand remains strong, prices often rise much faster than consumers expect. Another challenge is energy. Roasting coffee requires specialized equipment and significant amounts of electricity or natural gas. Packaging facilities also depend on energy to keep production moving. As operating costs rise, manufacturers often have little choice but to increase prices. Preparedness doesn't necessarily mean storing years' worth of coffee. But many experienced shoppers buy an extra bag when prices are reasonable. Whole beans generally maintain their flavor longer than pre-ground coffee when stored in airtight containers away from heat, light, and moisture. Some people even vacuum seal unopened bags for longer storage. The goal isn't panic buying. It's avoiding the need to purchase during sudden price spikes. Coffee earns the number 15 spot because it depends on climate-sensitive crops, global shipping, rising production costs, and strong worldwide demand. If those pressures continue building, your favorite morning beverage could become far more expensive than many people expect. But coffee is only the beginning. The next food on our list is found in nearly every kitchen, plays a role in thousands of recipes, and if supplies tighten, the price increase could affect far more than just one section of the grocery store. Number 14. White sugar. Coming in at number 14 is one of the most overlooked staples in any grocery store. White sugar. Most people only think about sugar when they're baking cookies or adding a spoonful to their coffee. But sugar is much more than a sweetener. It's one of the most widely used ingredients in the food industry. Walk through almost any aisle in the supermarket and you'll find it everywhere. Breakfast cereal, soft drinks, fruit juice, candy, ice cream, yogurt, ketchup, barbecue sauce, bread, pasta sauce, granola bars, cookies, cake mixes, and hundreds of other everyday products. That means when sugar becomes more expensive, the impact doesn't stop with the bags on the baking aisle. It can quietly push up the price of countless other foods at the same time. The journey begins in the fields. Most of the world's sugar comes from sugarcane and sugar beets. Both crops depend heavily on favorable weather. Too little rain can reduce yields. Too much rain can delay harvesting and damage crops. Extreme heat can reduce sugar content inside the plants. Strong storms can flatten fields and interrupt harvesting operations. Because these crops are seasonal, growers can't simply replace a poor harvest a few weeks later. Once production falls behind, supplies may remain tight until the next growing season. Processing is another major expense. After harvest, sugar must be cleaned, crushed, refined, dried, packaged, and transported to warehouses and grocery stores. Every step requires electricity, fuel, heavy machinery, and skilled workers. When production costs increase, those higher expenses eventually reach consumers. Transportation plays an equally important role. Sugar is shipped in enormous quantities by truck, rail, and cargo ship. Any increase in fuel prices or shipping costs adds another layer of expense before the product reaches store shelves. Then there's demand. Sugar isn't purchased only by families. Commercial bakeries rely on it. Candy manufacturers need massive amounts every day. Soft drink companies consume enormous quantities. Restaurants, hotels, and food processors all compete for the same supply. When production slows while demand stays strong, prices can rise surprisingly fast. Experienced preppers understand another advantage of sugar. It stores exceptionally well when kept dry. It also plays an important role in food preservation. Homemade jams, jellies, fruit preserves, and syrups all depend on sugar. That's one reason many preparedness-minded families always keep a reasonable supply in their pantry. The smartest approach isn't to empty store shelves. It's simply to buy gradually while prices remain manageable. One extra bag during regular shopping trips can make a noticeable difference over time. White sugar earns the number 14 spot because it's deeply connected to the global food industry, depends on weather-sensitive crops, and influences the price of thousands of everyday products. If supply pressures continue increasing, sugar could quietly become one of the most expensive ingredients hiding in plain sight. But the next food on our countdown is even more familiar. It's served at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, appears in homes around the world every single day, and if prices surge, nearly every family will feel the impact almost immediately. Number 13. Bread. At number 13 is one of the most familiar foods in the entire grocery store. Bread. It's so common that many families hardly think about it. A loaf goes into the shopping cart almost automatically. Toast in the morning. Sandwiches for lunch. Garlic bread with dinner. Hamburger buns for cookouts. Dinner rolls for family meals. Bread has become one of the foundations of everyday eating. That's exactly why a major price increase would affect millions of households almost immediately. Although bread may seem simple, producing it requires an entire chain of industries working together. Everything begins with wheat. If wheat harvests are reduced because of drought, flooding, heat waves, or severe storms, flour becomes more expensive. Once flour prices rise, bakeries begin paying more before a single loaf is even made. But flour is only one ingredient. Bread also depends on yeast, salt, sugar, cooking oil, water, and in many recipes, dairy products. When several of those ingredients increase in price at the same time, the total cost of production climbs much faster than most shoppers realize. Energy is another major expense. Commercial bakeries operate around the clock. Industrial mixers, large proofing rooms, massive ovens, cooling systems, packaging equipment. Every piece of machinery requires electricity or natural gas. When energy prices increase, bakeries often have little choice but to pass some of those costs on to consumers. Transportation adds another layer of pressure. Fresh bread has a short shelf life compared to many pantry staples. That means delivery trucks leave bakeries every day to supply supermarkets, convenience stores, restaurants, and warehouses. Higher fuel prices immediately affect distribution costs. Unlike canned goods that may sit in storage for months, bread must move quickly through the supply chain. Labor costs also play an important role. Bakeries rely on skilled workers to mix dough, operate equipment, package products, and manage deliveries. As wages and operating expenses increase, the final price of each loaf often follows. Consumer demand rarely slows. Even during difficult economic times, people continue buying bread because it's affordable, filling, and incredibly versatile. Families may reduce spending on luxury items, but bread usually remains on the shopping list. That steady demand helps keep prices elevated whenever supplies become tighter. Preparedness-minded families often reduce their exposure by learning simple baking skills. Keeping flour, yeast, salt, and other basic ingredients at home allows them to bake fresh bread whenever necessary. Others freeze extra loaves purchased during sales to extend freshness and avoid paying higher prices later. Preparedness isn't about filling your freezer with dozens of loaves. It's about having options when grocery prices become unpredictable. Bread earns the number 13 spot because it depends on multiple ingredients, continuous production, daily transportation, and strong consumer demand. If costs continue rising across those areas, the humble loaf of bread could become far more expensive than most shoppers expect. But the next food on our countdown doesn't just feed people. It feeds livestock around the world, supports thousands of food products, and serves as one of the most important agricultural commodities on the planet. Number 12. Corn. At number 12 is one of the most important crops in the entire world. Corn. Most people think of corn as a simple vegetable served alongside dinner. But that's only a tiny part of the story. Corn is one of the foundations of the global food system. It's used to make cornmeal, corn flour, tortillas, breakfast cereal, cornstarch, popcorn, corn oil, sweeteners, snack foods, and hundreds of processed grocery products. Beyond the supermarket, corn is also one of the primary feeds for cattle, poultry, and other livestock. That means when corn prices rise, the effects don't stop in the produce aisle. They can eventually increase the cost of meat, dairy, eggs, and countless packaged foods. Everything begins on the farm. Corn requires healthy soil, reliable rainfall or irrigation, quality seed, fertilizer, fuel, modern equipment, and months of favorable weather. If drought reduces rainfall, if flooding damages fields, or if extreme heat arrives during critical stages of growth, harvests can fall well below expectations. When that happens across multiple growing regions, the impact can be enormous. Production costs have also increased. Farmers depend on diesel fuel to plant, spray, and harvest their crops. Fertilizer prices remain one of the largest expenses in modern agriculture. Replacement parts for tractors and harvesting equipment continue becoming more expensive. Each additional cost raises the price required to produce every bushel of corn. Transportation creates another challenge. Millions of tons of corn travel by truck, rail, barge, and cargo ship before reaching processing facilities and food manufacturers. Higher fuel costs or transportation delays can add significant expenses long before corn reaches grocery store shelves. Demand remains incredibly strong. Food manufacturers need corn. Livestock producers need corn. Export markets need corn. Biofuel producers often compete for corn as well. When several industries depend on the same crop at the same time, even a modest reduction in supply can trigger noticeable price increases. Preparedness-minded families recognize corn's importance because it influences so many different grocery categories. Even if you rarely buy fresh corn, you're almost certainly buying products that depend on it. That makes corn one of the hidden drivers of grocery inflation. Some families also store dried corn or cornmeal as part of their emergency pantry, rotating it through everyday meals to maintain freshness. Preparedness isn't only about storing food. It's also about understanding which ingredients quietly affect the prices of everything else. Corn earns the number 12 spot because it's one of the world's most important agricultural commodities, supports countless food products, feeds livestock, and depends on weather, fuel, fertilizer, and transportation all at the same time. If those pressures continue building, corn could become one of the biggest reasons grocery prices climb across multiple aisles. But the next food on our countdown is one that almost every household keeps in the refrigerator. It's rich in protein, incredibly versatile, and has already shown just how quickly its price can skyrocket when supply is disrupted. Number 11. Eggs. We've reached the next item on our countdown, and it's one that nearly every family buys on a regular basis. Eggs. They're one of the most affordable and versatile sources of protein available. Scrambled for breakfast, boiled for lunch, fried for dinner, used in baking, mixed into pasta, added to salads, and included in hundreds of packaged foods found throughout the grocery store. Because eggs play such an important role in everyday cooking, even a modest price increase can have a noticeable impact on a family's grocery bill. But what could cause egg prices to triple? The answer begins at the farm. Unlike canned foods or dry pantry staples, eggs can't be stored for years. Fresh eggs must be produced every single day. That means the supply chain depends on healthy laying hens producing consistently throughout the year. If anything interrupts that production, grocery stores can feel the effects surprisingly quickly. One of the biggest risks is disease. A large outbreak affecting commercial poultry farms can reduce egg production almost overnight. When millions of laying hens are lost, replacing them isn't a fast process. Young hens require months before they begin producing eggs. Even after farms recover, supplies can remain limited for quite some time. Feed costs also have a major influence. Laying hens consume grain every day, especially corn and soybean meal. If grain prices increase because of drought, flooding, poor harvests, or transportation costs, farmers spend much more to produce the same number of eggs. Eventually, those higher costs reach supermarket shelves. Energy is another hidden expense. Modern egg farms rely on automated feeding systems, ventilation, lighting, temperature control, refrigeration, and transportation. Every increase in electricity, natural gas, or diesel fuel raises the overall cost of production. Demand adds even more pressure. When beef, pork, or chicken become too expensive, many families naturally turn to eggs as a lower-cost source of protein. That sudden increase in demand often arrives just when supplies are already under pressure. The result can be empty shelves and rapidly rising prices. We've seen this happen before. A product that was once considered one of the most affordable items in the grocery store suddenly became one of the most expensive. Preparedness-minded shoppers don't usually fill their refrigerators with months' worth of eggs. Instead, they watch for reasonable prices and buy what they'll realistically use. Some also keep shelf-stable alternatives like powdered eggs for emergency situations, while others simply plan meals that can rely on different protein sources if prices spike. Preparedness isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's about having enough flexibility to adjust when conditions change. Eggs earn the number 11 spot because they depend on daily production, healthy poultry flocks, affordable feed, refrigerated transportation, and steady consumer demand. If several of those factors come under pressure at the same time, eggs could once again become one of the fastest rising prices in the grocery store. But now we're entering the top 10. The remaining foods aren't just important pantry staples. They're some of the products families rely on week after week, and the next one has already become a symbol of rising grocery costs around the world. Number 10. Cooking oil. We've reached the top 10. And from this point forward, every food on our countdown has the potential to make a serious impact on your grocery budget. At number 10 is something found in almost every kitchen: cooking oil. Whether it's vegetable oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, or soybean oil, millions of families depend on it every single day. It's used for frying, baking, roasting, sautéing, making salad dressings, preparing sauces, and producing thousands of packaged foods sold in supermarkets. Without cooking oil, many recipes simply aren't possible. That's why even a small increase in price can be felt across an entire grocery bill. But the price of cooking oil depends on much more than most shoppers realize. It all begins with crops. Different oils come from different plants: soybeans, sunflowers, canola, corn, peanuts. Each crop depends on favorable weather throughout the growing season. Extended drought can reduce harvests. Heavy rain can flood fields. Heat waves can lower yields. Powerful storms can damage crops before they're ready to harvest. When production drops, less raw material reaches oil processing plants. After harvesting, seeds must be cleaned, crushed, pressed, refined, filtered, bottled, packaged, and transported across the country. Every step requires electricity, fuel, industrial machinery, and skilled workers. If operating costs increase, the final price of cooking oil usually follows. Another challenge is demand. Cooking oil isn't used only in home kitchens. Restaurants consume enormous amounts every day. Food manufacturers rely on it to produce chips, crackers, frozen meals, baked goods, sauces, and snack foods. Fast food chains purchase it in massive quantities. That means households compete with entire industries for the same supply. Transportation is another major expense. Large quantities of cooking oil move by truck, rail, and cargo ship before reaching grocery store shelves. Any disruption in shipping or increase in fuel costs adds another layer of expense. Even the plastic bottles used for packaging can become more expensive when manufacturing costs rise. Experienced preppers understand that cooking oil has a shorter shelf life than many dry pantry staples. Instead of buying excessive amounts, they focus on smart rotation. They purchase enough for regular use. Store it in a cool, dark place. Use the oldest bottles first, and replace them before quality begins to decline. Some families also keep more than one type of oil. If one variety becomes unusually expensive, they have the flexibility to use another without dramatically changing their cooking habits. Preparedness isn't always about storing more. Sometimes it's about giving yourself more options. Cooking oil earns the number 10 spot because it depends on weather-sensitive crops, energy-intensive processing, global transportation, and constant demand from both households and the food industry. If those pressures continue growing, cooking oil could become one of the first grocery items to remind shoppers just how quickly everyday costs can rise. But the next food on our countdown is even more important. It's one of the world's most consumed staple foods, feeds billions of people every year, and when its price starts climbing, the effects can be felt across entire countries. Number 9. Rice. At number 9 is one of the most important staple foods on Earth. Rice. For billions of people, rice isn't simply another side dish. It's the foundation of breakfast, lunch, dinner, and countless traditional meals. Its affordability and versatility have made it one of the most widely consumed foods in the world. That's exactly why a major increase in rice prices would affect millions of families almost immediately. Unlike many processed foods, rice begins with a crop that depends heavily on nature. Rice fields require enormous amounts of water throughout the growing season. Extended drought can reduce irrigation supplies and lower yields. Too much rainfall can flood fields and damage crops before harvest. Extreme heat during key stages of growth can reduce both quality and production. When harvests decline in several major growing regions at the same time, the global supply tightens quickly. International trade adds another layer of uncertainty. Many countries produce rice, but many others depend heavily on imports to feed their populations. If one of the world's largest exporting nations experiences a poor harvest or decides to limit exports to protect its own food supply, the amount of rice available on the international market can shrink almost overnight. Importing countries then compete for fewer shipments, pushing prices even higher. Processing also plays an important role. After harvest, rice must be dried, milled, polished, sorted, packaged, stored, and transported before it reaches grocery store shelves. Each stage depends on reliable electricity, modern equipment, fuel, and skilled workers. Higher operating costs eventually become higher grocery prices. Transportation is equally important. Rice often travels hundreds or even thousands of miles before reaching consumers. It moves through ports, warehouses, distribution centers, and delivery trucks. If fuel prices increase or shipping slows, retailers pay more to keep their shelves stocked. Consumer behavior can accelerate price increases even further. Whenever people hear reports of inflation or supply shortages, rice is often one of the first foods they purchase in larger quantities. Because it's affordable, filling, and stores well, families naturally see it as a smart pantry staple. But when millions of shoppers make that same decision at the same time, store inventories disappear quickly. That sudden demand can push prices even higher. Experienced preppers rarely wait until headlines begin warning about shortages. They gradually build a practical supply over time. One extra bag during a regular shopping trip. Another when prices are especially good. Over the course of several months, those small purchases create a dependable pantry without straining the budget. Rotation is simple. Use the oldest rice first. Replace it during normal grocery shopping. That way your emergency supply remains fresh while becoming part of your everyday meals. Preparedness isn't about buying everything at once. It's about staying one step ahead. Rice earns the number 9 spot because it feeds billions of people, depends on weather-sensitive harvests, relies on international trade, and often experiences surging demand whenever uncertainty grows. But the next food on our countdown has become one of the biggest symbols of grocery inflation in recent years. And if production costs continue rising, shoppers could once again be shocked by what they see at the meat counter. Number 8. Beef. We're getting closer to the top of the list. And at number 8 is one of the most popular proteins in grocery stores everywhere. Beef. Whether it's ground beef for tacos, steaks for the grill, roasts for family dinners, or beef used in soups, burgers, and casseroles, millions of households purchase it every single week. But beef is also one of the most expensive foods to produce. That's why even small disruptions in the supply chain can lead to dramatic price increases. Unlike chickens, which reach market size in a matter of weeks, cattle require years of care before they're ready for processing. Ranchers invest enormous amounts of time and money into every animal. They need healthy pasture, reliable water, nutritious feed, veterinary care, equipment, labor, and transportation. Every one of those costs affects the final price consumers pay. Weather is one of the biggest factors. Extended drought can dry up grazing land and reduce the amount of hay available for winter feeding. When feed becomes scarce or too expensive, many ranchers reduce the size of their herds. While that may help them in the short term, it also means fewer cattle will be available in the months and years ahead. Rebuilding a herd isn't quick. It takes time for calves to grow and mature. That's why supply shortages in the beef industry often last much longer than people expect. Feed costs create another challenge. Corn and soybean meal are essential for raising healthy cattle. If grain prices rise because of poor harvests or higher transportation costs, farmers spend significantly more on every animal. Those higher expenses eventually reach grocery stores. Processing plants also play a major role. After cattle leave the ranch, they must be inspected, processed, cut, packaged, refrigerated, and shipped across the country. These facilities rely on skilled workers, electricity, refrigeration systems, and efficient transportation. Any disruption in that process can reduce supply while increasing costs. Demand remains remarkably strong. Restaurants, fast food chains, schools, hospitals, food manufacturers, and millions of households all compete for the same beef supply. Even when prices climb, demand often remains surprisingly steady. That combination of high demand and limited supply creates the perfect environment for significant price increases. Preparedness-minded shoppers understand that fresh beef has a limited shelf life. Instead of stockpiling large amounts, many purchase extra during sales and freeze it in meal-sized portions. Others include canned beef or freeze-dried beef in their emergency food storage for longer-term preparedness. The goal isn't to fill every inch of freezer space. It's to reduce the need to buy when prices suddenly spike. Another smart strategy is stretching beef further. Adding beans to chili. Serving beef over rice. Mixing vegetables into casseroles. These simple habits help families enjoy satisfying meals while making every pound go further. Preparedness isn't just about storing food. It's about using food wisely. Beef earns the number 8 spot because it requires years of production, depends on weather, feed, processing facilities, and transportation, while continuing to face strong consumer demand. If those pressures continue increasing, beef could become one of the most expensive items in the grocery store. But the next food on our countdown is even more deeply connected to the global food supply. It's found in thousands of everyday products, and when its price rises, entire sections of the supermarket often become more expensive at the same time. Number 7. Wheat. We've reached the top 7. And from this point on, every item has the potential to affect not just one product, but entire sections of the grocery store. At number 7 is one of the world's most important crops, wheat. Most people don't buy wheat itself. Instead, they buy everything made from it. Bread, pasta, crackers, cookies, bagels, pizza dough, breakfast cereal, flour tortillas, cake mixes, pastries, pretzels, stuffing, frozen meals, and hundreds of other products found in almost every aisle. That's what makes wheat so important. When wheat prices rise, grocery inflation doesn't stay in one place. It spreads throughout the store. Everything starts in the field. Wheat is planted months before it's harvested. During that time, farmers rely on favorable weather to produce a healthy crop. Too little rain can reduce yields. Too much rain can delay harvests and damage grain quality. Extreme heat during key growing stages can lower production. Unexpected frost, high winds, or severe storms can destroy months of hard work in just a few hours. Since wheat is harvested on seasonal cycles, a poor crop can't simply be replaced next week. Markets often have to wait until the following growing season for new supplies. That delay alone can put significant upward pressure on prices. Production costs continue to rise as well. Modern wheat farming depends on fertilizer, diesel fuel, large tractors, harvesting equipment, replacement parts, skilled labor, and irrigation in many regions. When those costs increase, farmers need higher prices just to remain profitable. Even with a good harvest, production may still become more expensive. Transportation plays another major role. After harvest, wheat must be transported to grain elevators, then to flour mills, food manufacturers, warehouses, distribution centers, and finally grocery stores. Every mile adds fuel costs. Every delay increases expenses. And every disruption affects the final price consumers pay. Global demand keeps the market under constant pressure. Wheat is one of the most traded agricultural commodities in the world. Many countries produce it. Many others depend heavily on imports. When major exporting regions experience poor harvests or supply disruptions, buyers around the world compete for fewer available shipments. That competition often drives prices even higher. Preparedness-minded families understand the value of wheat. Some store flour for everyday baking. Others choose whole wheat berries because they generally store much longer when properly packaged. Learning to bake homemade bread is another valuable skill. It provides flexibility if commercial bread becomes unusually expensive. Preparedness isn't simply about storing food. It's about knowing how to make the most of it. Wheat earns the number 7 spot because it's the foundation of thousands of grocery products. Depends on seasonal harvests, rising production costs, transportation, and strong global demand. If several of those pressures continue building at the same time, wheat could become one of the biggest drivers of grocery inflation. But the next food on our countdown isn't grown in fields. It comes from the sea. And a combination of changing oceans, higher fuel costs, and increasing demand could make it one of the most expensive proteins on your next grocery trip. Number 6. Seafood. We've reached the top 6. And from this point forward, every item on our countdown has the potential to put serious pressure on your grocery budget. At number 6 is one of the most unpredictable food categories in the supermarket. Seafood. Whether it's salmon, tuna, shrimp, cod, crab, or other popular seafood products, millions of families enjoy them every week. They're rich in protein, packed with nutrients, and often considered one of the healthiest choices available. But they're also among the most vulnerable foods when it comes to rising prices. Unlike crops that can be planted every season, much of the world's seafood depends on natural ecosystems. Wild fish populations constantly change due to water temperatures, ocean conditions, migration patterns, storms, and environmental changes. A poor fishing season can reduce supply long before shoppers notice empty shelves. Aquaculture, or fish farming, helps meet global demand, but it faces challenges of its own. Fish farms require quality feed, clean water, electricity, skilled workers, disease prevention, and continuous monitoring. If feed becomes more expensive or disease affects production, operating costs can increase quickly. Fuel is another major expense. Commercial fishing boats often travel hundreds of miles before returning to port. They consume enormous amounts of diesel fuel. When fuel prices rise, every fishing trip becomes more expensive. Those additional costs eventually work their way through seafood processors, wholesalers, distributors, and grocery stores. Processing adds another layer of cost. Fresh seafood must often be cleaned, filleted, frozen, packaged, stored in refrigerated facilities, and transported under carefully controlled temperatures. Maintaining that cold chain requires significant amounts of electricity and specialized equipment. Any disruption can increase costs while reducing available supply. International trade also plays an important role. Many seafood products sold in grocery stores travel across multiple countries before reaching consumers. They may be caught in one region, processed in another, packaged somewhere else, and finally shipped to supermarkets thousands of miles away. Global shipping delays or higher transportation costs can significantly increase retail prices. Demand continues to grow. More people are choosing seafood because of its nutritional benefits. Restaurants, hotels, cruise lines, food manufacturers, and grocery retailers all compete for the same supplies. When demand stays strong while production slows, prices often rise much faster than expected. Preparedness-minded families understand that fresh seafood isn't ideal for long-term storage. Instead, many include canned tuna, canned salmon, or freeze-dried seafood products in their emergency pantry. These options provide many of the same nutritional benefits while offering much longer shelf lives. Another practical strategy is watching for sales and freezing seafood in meal-sized portions. That reduces the need to buy during periods of unusually high prices. Preparedness isn't about avoiding seafood. It's about buying wisely before market conditions become more expensive. Seafood earns the number 6 spot because it depends on healthy oceans, aquaculture, fuel, refrigeration, international shipping, and growing worldwide demand. If those pressures continue increasing, seafood could become one of the fastest rising protein categories in the grocery store. But now we're entering the top 5. The remaining foods are among the most important staples in everyday life, And the next one is something millions of people pour over breakfast every single morning without giving it a second thought. Number 5. Milk. We've reached the top 5. And from this point forward, every food on our countdown has the potential to affect nearly every household. At number 5 is one of the most essential items in the refrigerator: milk. For many families, milk isn't optional. It's poured over cereal, added to coffee, used in smoothies, mixed into mashed potatoes, poured into soups, baked into breads and desserts, and turned into countless dairy products like cheese, butter, yogurt, cream, and ice cream. That's exactly why rising milk prices don't just affect one carton. They can increase the cost of entire sections of the grocery store. Everything begins on the dairy farm. Producing milk is a non-stop operation. Dairy cows must be fed every single day. They require clean water, nutritious hay, corn, soybean meal, veterinary care, shelter, and constant attention. Unlike crops that are harvested once a season, dairy farming operates every day of the year. If feed prices increase, farmers immediately feel the impact. Corn and soy are among the largest expenses for many dairy operations. When drought reduces grain harvests or transportation costs rise, feeding a dairy herd becomes much more expensive. Eventually, those costs work their way to consumers. Weather also plays a major role. Extreme heat can reduce milk production. Cows produce less milk when they're under stress from high temperatures. Drought can reduce pasture growth while increasing the cost of hay and other feed. Severe storms may interrupt transportation and delay deliveries to processing plants. After milk leaves the farm, another complex process begins. It must be tested, pasteurized, homogenized, packaged, refrigerated, transported, stored, and delivered to grocery stores. Every stage depends on electricity, refrigeration equipment, fuel, and skilled workers. If energy costs continue rising, dairy products become more expensive to produce and distribute. Demand rarely disappears. Families continue buying milk. Schools purchase enormous quantities. Restaurants rely on it. Coffee shops use it every day. Food manufacturers need it for countless products. That steady demand keeps pressure on supplies, even during periods of higher prices. Preparedness-minded shoppers know that fresh milk has a short shelf life. Instead of stockpiling gallons in the refrigerator, many keep shelf-stable alternatives like powdered milk or ultra-pasteurized milk for emergencies. Others simply buy extra when prices are favorable and freeze milk for shorter-term storage if they'll use it soon. The goal isn't to fill the freezer. It's to avoid paying peak prices whenever possible. Milk earns the number 5 spot because it depends on healthy dairy herds, affordable feed, reliable refrigeration, continuous transportation, and constant consumer demand. If several of those factors become more expensive at the same time, milk prices could rise much faster than many shoppers expect. But now we're entering the top 4. The remaining foods aren't just grocery staples. They're products that millions of families rely on every single day, and the next one has already become one of the biggest symbols of food inflation in recent years. Number 4. Butter. We're down to the top 4. And at number 4 is a product that many shoppers don't think about until they see the price tag. Butter. For generations, butter has been a kitchen essential. It's spread on toast, melted over vegetables, used in baking, mixed into mashed potatoes, added to sauces, and included in countless family recipes. Whether you're making cookies, cakes, biscuits, or homemade bread, butter often plays a key role. That's why even a sharp increase in its price can affect much more than just the dairy aisle. Butter begins with one ingredient: cream. And producing cream starts with healthy dairy cows. Every stick of butter represents a significant amount of fresh milk. If milk production slows, butter production slows with it. Dairy farmers face challenges every single day: feed costs, veterinary care, labor expenses, fuel, electricity, equipment maintenance, and unpredictable weather. When any of those costs rise, producing milk becomes more expensive. Eventually, those higher costs make their way into butter prices. Weather remains one of the biggest risks. Extreme heat can reduce milk production. Long periods of drought can limit pasture growth and increase the price of hay and grain. Heavy storms can interrupt transportation and delay deliveries from farms to processing plants. Because dairy production happens every day, even short-term disruptions can affect supply. Processing butter is another energy-intensive operation. Cream must be separated from milk, pasteurized, churned, packaged, stored under refrigeration, and transported in temperature-controlled trucks. Every step depends on reliable electricity and fuel. When energy prices climb, the cost of producing butter often follows. Demand also plays a major role. Butter isn't purchased only by families. Commercial bakeries use enormous quantities. Restaurants depend on it. Hotels, cafes, food manufacturers, and grocery store bakeries all compete for the same supply. During holiday baking seasons, demand often rises even higher. Millions of households begin buying extra butter for cookies, pies, cakes, and festive meals. If production is already under pressure, prices can increase very quickly. Preparedness-minded shoppers usually avoid panic buying. Instead, many purchase a few extra packages when prices are low and store them in the freezer. Butter freezes exceptionally well for several months without losing much of its quality. Others keep shelf-stable clarified butter, commonly known as ghee, as part of their emergency pantry. Small, consistent purchases are often more effective than waiting until prices suddenly jump. Preparedness isn't about buying everything today. It's about making smart decisions before everyone else rushes to the store. Butter earns the number 4 spot because it depends on healthy dairy herds, affordable feed, refrigerated transportation, energy-intensive processing, and strong year-round demand. If those pressures continue increasing, butter could easily become one of the fastest rising prices in the grocery store. But now we've reached the top 3. The remaining foods don't just influence one aisle. They have the power to affect the cost of meals served in millions of homes around the world. Number 3. Wheat flour. We've reached the top 3. And at number 3 is one of the most important building blocks in the entire food system. Wheat flour. Most people don't think about flour directly, but they eat it constantly without realizing it. Every slice of bread, every plate of pasta, every cookie, every cake, every pizza crust, every pastry, every tortilla, and countless packaged foods all depend on it. That makes wheat flour one of the most influential ingredients in the entire grocery store. When flour prices rise, the effects don't stay in one aisle. They spread across bakeries, restaurants, and household kitchens at the same time. Everything starts with wheat. If wheat harvests are affected by drought, flooding, heat waves, or storms, grain supply drops. That immediately impacts flour production. But farming is only part of the equation. Turning wheat into flour requires industrial milling operations. Large facilities clean, grind, sift, and package grain at massive scale. These mills depend on electricity, machinery, skilled workers, and continuous transportation of raw grain. If energy costs rise or supply chains slow down, flour production becomes more expensive. Transportation is another major factor. Wheat must travel from farms to storage elevators, then to milling facilities, then to distribution centers, and finally to grocery stores. Each step adds fuel costs, labor costs, and logistical challenges. Even small disruptions can ripple through the system. Global demand also plays a major role. Wheat is one of the most traded agricultural commodities in the world. Many countries depend heavily on imports to meet their food needs. When supply tightens in major producing regions, competition increases internationally. That competition often pushes prices higher across the board. Preparedness-minded families understand that flour is one of the most flexible pantry staples. It can be used for baking bread, biscuits, pancakes, pizza dough, and more. Some households store all-purpose flour for convenience, while others store whole wheat berries and grind them as needed for longer shelf life. Both approaches work depending on storage goals. Another important point is rotation. Flour does not last as long as whole grains, So many people use it regularly in cooking and replace it as part of normal grocery shopping. That keeps storage fresh and prevents waste. Preparedness isn't about storing food and forgetting it. It's about integrating storage into everyday life. Wheat flour earns the number 3 spot because it sits at the center of global food production, depends on agriculture, energy, transportation, and international trade, and influences the price of thousands of everyday foods. If these pressures continue building, flour could become one of the most important drivers of rising food costs across the entire grocery store. But now we've reached the top 2. And the next item is something almost every household buys regularly, stores easily, and depends on more than most people ever realize. Got it. We already used cooking oil at 2, so I'll fix that and move forward cleanly. We'll replace 2 with a new item and continue the countdown properly. Here is the corrected continuation. Number 2. Chicken. We're down to the final 2. And at number 2 is one of the most widely consumed proteins in the world. Chicken. For millions of families, chicken is a weekly staple. It's grilled for dinner, fried for fast meals, added to soups, used in sandwiches, shredded for salads, and cooked in countless traditional recipes across different cultures. It's often seen as the budget protein compared to beef or seafood, but that balance is changing. Chicken prices are closely tied to several fragile systems. It all starts with feed. Most chickens are raised on a diet heavily dependent on corn and soybean meal. If grain prices rise due to poor harvests, drought, or supply chain disruptions, the cost of raising poultry increases immediately. That pressure doesn't stay on the farm for long. It moves straight into grocery stores. Energy costs also play a major role. Modern poultry farms depend on controlled environments, temperature systems, ventilation, lighting, automation, and large-scale processing equipment. When electricity or fuel prices increase, production costs rise across the entire system. Disease is another serious risk. Because poultry is raised in large numbers, outbreaks can spread quickly. When that happens, entire flocks may be affected, and supply can drop sharply in a short time. Even after recovery begins, it takes time for production levels to return to normal. Transportation adds another layer of cost. Chicken products must be refrigerated or frozen throughout the entire supply chain, from processing plants to warehouses to retail stores. That requires constant energy and reliable logistics. Any disruption can increase prices or reduce availability. Demand remains extremely strong because chicken is one of the most versatile proteins available. It works in fast food, home cooking, meal prep, and international cuisine. When beef or other meats become expensive, demand for chicken often rises even higher. That added pressure can push prices up quickly. Preparedness-minded families often buy extra chicken during sales and freeze it in portion-sized packs. Others rely on canned chicken or other shelf-stable protein options for long-term storage. Chicken earns the number 2 spot because it depends on feed prices, energy costs, disease control, refrigeration, transportation, and global demand all at once. When multiple of these pressures increase together, chicken prices can rise faster than most households expect. And now we've reached the number 1 food on this countdown. The final item is something almost every kitchen depends on. It is used in cooking, baking, and daily meals around the world. And if its price rises significantly, it can quietly increase the cost of almost everything you eat. Number 1. Salt. We've reached the number 1 food on today's countdown. And it's something so simple, so common, and so essential that most people never stop to think about its importance. Salt. Almost every kitchen in the world has it. It sits on dining tables, in spice cabinets, beside stoves, and in nearly every processed food you buy at the store. Salt isn't just a seasoning. It's a foundation ingredient. It enhances flavor, balances recipes, preserves food, and plays a role in hundreds of industrial food processes. That means when salt prices rise, the impact doesn't stay limited to home cooking. It spreads through the entire food system. Everything begins with production. Salt is harvested from seawater, underground deposits, or salt lakes. While it may seem simple, Producing large quantities requires energy, equipment, and transportation. Seawater must be evaporated. Rock salt must be mined and crushed. Then it must be cleaned, refined, and packaged. Each step depends on machinery, fuel, and labor. If energy costs rise, production becomes more expensive across the board. Transportation also plays a major role. Salt is shipped in massive volumes around the world. From production sites to processing facilities. From factories to distribution centers. And finally to grocery stores and food manufacturers. Any increase in fuel prices or logistics costs can slowly push retail prices higher. But salt's biggest influence isn't just what it costs. It's how widely it's used. Salt is essential in baking. Bread, crackers, biscuits, and pastries all depend on it. It's used in meat processing, cheese production, pickling, canning, and countless packaged foods. Even snacks like chips and popcorn rely heavily on salt. That means even a small increase in salt prices can affect thousands of other products indirectly. Demand is also extremely stable. Every household uses salt. Every restaurant uses salt. Every food manufacturer depends on it. Unlike many other commodities, demand for salt rarely drops, even during economic slowdowns. Preparedness-minded families understand that salt is one of the easiest long-term storage items. It stores indefinitely when kept dry. It requires no refrigeration. And it remains useful in both everyday cooking and food preservation. That makes it one of the most reliable pantry staples available. Salt earns the #1 spot because it is essential to cooking, deeply embedded in food production, globally transported in huge quantities, and used in thousands of products that people consume every day. If costs across energy, transportation, and production continue rising, salt could quietly influence the price of far more foods than most people ever realize. Food prices rarely move in isolation. When one ingredient becomes more expensive, it often affects dozens of other products in ways most shoppers don't immediately notice. That's why awareness matters. Not to create fear, but to help you make smarter, more prepared decisions during your normal grocery shopping. Building a pantry slowly, paying attention to sales, and understanding how food systems work can make a real difference over time. Preparedness isn't about panic buying. It's about staying one step ahead. If you enjoyed this countdown, make sure to subscribe to Prepper Pulse and turn on notifications. Every week, we share practical food insights, grocery saving strategies, and preparedness tips to help you stay ready for whatever comes next. Stay prepared, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.